Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, September 21st. We are going forward. I think since last week, probably. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for carrying on while I was on vacation with my family. We will be live for anyone that wants to join us. And we also can be found through Zoom for certain parts of the meetings. So let's stand for the pledge and kick off our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Trustee Fritchie,
Present.
Trustee Lopez,
Everybody to speak into your mic as closely as possible.
We haven't done this in a while.
Hey, Martha, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
it's okay. Trustee Lopez,
Present.
Trustee White,
Present.
Trustee Quesada,
Present.
Mayor Levin.
Present.
Okay, we have mayors and trustees announcements.
Okay, I think we have some announcements. For those of you watching, we just forgot my name tag tonight. No big deal. Any complaints can go to Deputy Mayor Quesada. All compliments come directly to Rika Levin, mayor@villageofaustining.org. Okay, I'm going to start to my rightmost, Trustee White. Someone's feisty.
I just want to say that there's going to be something interesting happening on Sunday morning. Star of Bethlehem is going to be moving its service to Broad Avenue. Blessings on Broad Avenue will start at 11. And then afterwards, there's going to be like a street fair. And they're going to have vendors and there are going to be food trucks, music. They're going to be giving away supplies and groceries, and it's free. So that's on Broad Avenue on Sunday at 11.
Do you know what time it's ending?
I am not sure, but around 5, I think.
So you guys went through the event management, everything's cool. Great. Is that it? Great. To my right, Trustee Lopez.
Mayor,
you.
can you speak into the microphone, please?
Including me. How's it sound? Test 1, 2. How am I looking?
Great, thank you.
Great. Two things that I want to say. Both of them are in the past. So yesterday, Tuesday, our police department hosted the police reform advisory committee. I think it's committee, yeah. And our civilian police complaint review board in a tour of our police station. And because so many of the meetings have been remote, because so many of the members of the PRAC have not had an opportunity to see our police station in person, that was a great opportunity to see how it all functions and how it all comes together. And so grateful to OPD for opening their doors to show exactly how it works. I also want to highlight last Saturday, the Hispanic, was it Saturday or Sunday? Sunday. Oh, Sunday.
Sunday.
Last Sunday, that's why I always announce things in the past. I can't get it wrong. I already have the Hispanic festival that happened, organized by Austining Padres. It was a very successful event, way more people than they anticipated. It was a warm September day with music and a lot of vendors. And it was a great opportunity to see so many people coming out. And so for me, having started my trustee career in 2020, when so many events shut down and so few community things were happening, to be able to see from Jennifer Cabrera to Trustee Quesada, Deputy Mayor Quesada, much respect, and lots of community members out there. You were there. I didn't bump into you. Dana was there. I mean, it was a who's who at the Hispanic Festival. So I'm so grateful for that group for putting it together, and looking forward to all the great events we have coming up this fall and winter.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else?
No announcements on my end, Mayor.
Great, okay, a couple of things. I'm gonna, good segue to event management. A couple of years ago, a thought was given to the number of events that we have here in the village. The town also carries events, but we generally leave that to them. Through our parks, through our streets, downtown, waterfront, and it goes on. Was already in discussion by the village manager as the requests of events have risen over the years. The number of events, the size of events, some that have been going on historically for years, others are new to us. The village manager and the staff really wanted the police department, et cetera, to put in some policy in place. They interviewed and met with many of the shopkeepers, downtown folks, we have over 200 nonprofits registered in Austin. That could be a one-person operation to, tens of millions of dollars in operation size with hundreds of people. So it's all sizes, but it's a lot of nonprofits, including 22 or so religious houses of worship, etc., and the list goes on. So there were events this weekend, and people love the events. Many municipalities have stopped doing events. They're costly to the community. They cause traffic issues, etc. In addition to being great, there are also some management issues. So the staff and village manager put together a policy which the town has adopted for the most part and coordinated through the community center, etc. We look forward to community members not only writing to us. I did get a number of complaints this morning, level of sound, parking, all sorts of issues. A few, I wouldn't say a lot, I would say a few. We encourage that. I encourage all members of the community, those that do the events, those that want to comment on events, to reach out to the village manager or anybody on the BOT, because we are constantly looking to improve. We want to continue doing events. We do not want to be like other municipalities that have stopped doing events, but we are not a big city with the kind of budgets and people power to manage huge events. So we're trying to do the best we can, is the best way I would say. So we do look for input, whether you call it a complaint or input, doesn't matter to me. And we want to work with that. We do need to look, and we do actually look at every event now afterwards. And the village manager does sit down with the staff, asks the police to see if there are any issues. So please feel free to comment, good, bad, and indifferent, about the events that we hold. And now I guess some of them are being done in parks, some are in the waterfront. We do try to spread some of them around so that they're not always exactly in the same spot. So look forward to the events into the winter. As we've heard, they do grow in the spring and in the summer. The other growth area came through COVID. Many institutions have figured out that it's nice to do events in our streets and our parks, because during COVID, you couldn't do anything inside. So that added to our investigation into best ways to do events. So just something to sort of mention to the public as far as giving us feedback. Secondly, next week is the beginning of the high holidays for those of the Jewish faith and others who celebrate the high holidays. I do want to wish everyone that celebrates that holiday, my family included, a very happy New Year. Past couple of years have been tough, but we in the village have really become a community, have pulled ourselves together, have helped each other, and I'm hoping for a spectacular New Year. And the fun thing when you celebrate the Jewish New Year is you celebrate January 1st all over again with the next New Year, with two different calendars. So we get to do both of them. So to those that celebrate, a happy New Year. To those that don't, you can call me for recipes if you'd like to. Those were my announcements. And again, thank you to everyone for covering for me while I was away on vacation. Martha.
Okay, administrative reports, village manager Karen Dottori.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back, Mayor. We hope you enjoyed your trip. So since no one made an announcement, I do want to say that right before this meeting, we just had the ACON. Did you mention the ACON?
I didn't know if I was allowed to or supposed to or what the deal was, so I didn't mention it.
Excellent,
But
excellent.
please, by all means.
Okay,
Yeah.
we had Chief Sylvester and Lieutenant Donahue and Lieutenant Zimmerman and the folks from Axon, which is a company that is now doing virtual training with artificial intelligence, and it's pretty high tech and it's pretty amazing. And the board members were able to try it out, which is pretty cool. And it was a really great presentation that really speaks to the future of training and policing and will allow things to be more effective. But I will let the chief go into that in more detail, but I thought it was really exciting to be able to see it, having not seen it before. So thank you for accommodating that this evening. The other thing I want to remind everybody.
Village manager. Can I make one quick comment on that?
Sure.
I'm excited. I'm excited by it. I didn't know I was supposed to not. Okay. I would really love to talk about it. One of the main things that I thought was impactful about the experience was that you get an opportunity as a police officer to experience a scenario both from a police officer perspective and from the perspective of the community member that there's all kinds of scenarios from someone potentially committing suicide, intervening with peers, other police officers. And one of the scenarios that I did was around autism. And to be able to experience the same scenario as the person who is autistic and as the police officer, that you're hearing different things, you're seeing different things, and it builds a level of empathy that you really can't recreate in any kind of 2D PowerPoint kind of situation. And so experiencing it was really powerful. So thank you to the team from Axon for coming to demonstrate that technology. And we'll talk about it again come budget time, but I'm grateful for the chief for putting it together because there's nothing like experiencing it ourselves.
Thank you. The other thing I want to remind everybody is tomorrow is car-free day. So, you know, that's an opportunity for us to get a little bit more exercise and reduce our carbon footprint. And it's something that we're working on with the town and the village. There'll be some events. The Riscos are giving away egg shakers to people who don't use their car. We have the TCT will has some promotions, the Great Dance Studio, Leaffoot Creamery, Books for Humanity, Hudson Valley Books for Humanity, and Sing Sing Brewery all participating. So, you know, if you can tomorrow, instead of driving, work from home, bike, walk, carpool, vanpool, and just save a little bit of gas. So this is the 5th year that Ossining is celebrating this day, and it's good to have the whole community engaged with it. So it's really a nice event and a good way to just get out there and get some steps without spending money on gas. I also tonight, last week, Assistant Village Manager Matty Sahatch was at NICOM, the New York Conference of Mayors, the entire week, learning lots of new stuff. She was there with our Director of Personnel, Marissa Rockison. But I'd like to just use this time for Matty to just give a quick update to the board on the key takeaways from NICOM, because we always learn a lot of good things there, and we'd like to have this opportunity for her to share them with us.
Sure. Thank you, Village Manager. Good evening, board. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yes, as Karen mentioned, Marissa and I were in Saratoga Springs for 4 days and change last week at NICOM Fall Training School, which is a really exciting opportunity to not only learn about the latest and greatest from NICOM's perspective, but also to speak with our peers in other communities and see how they're approaching challenges similar to what we have here in the village. I, certainly can't speak for Marissa, although I will speak for Marissa. Having debriefed with her, this was her first time going to NICOM. So obviously she went to a lot of the, the personnel and HR related courses. She found it tremendously helpful in coming into her new role. But I think something that she found and something that I found as well was how well positioned we are here in the village compared to our, even neighboring communities throughout Westchester, in terms of how we've been able to look forward and come up with policies that are proactive instead of reactive, for many of the things that other communities are struggling with. So I was able to attend just shy of a dozen classes. Some of the more interesting ones had to do with First Amendment hot topics, which I know is something that we've discussed. Sort of talking about a flag raising policy is something that a lot of other communities are considering. I know that's something that's on the board's docket now, as well as First Amendment auditors. This is something that, the board is probably familiar. We had a First Amendment auditor come visit us earlier in the year, and this is something that was somewhat new to us, but we're learning about very quickly. For those who are not aware, this is a group of citizens, not necessarily organized, who are interested in learning more about local government, and make visits to municipal properties to try to make sure that we're doing everything exactly by the letter of the law. So in terms of, having access to documents, FOIL procedures, things of that nature. So to make sure that everyone is able to continue to receive these visitors in a way that keeps everybody safe and comfortable, it is being recommended that we do some training with our staff, as well as come up with a policy, just to ensure that everybody's on the same page. So we look forward to introducing that later this year. We also, one of the things that I was most surprised about, well, not really most surprised. I think we all know this. There was a class about social media best practices and pitfalls. We are far and away the grand champions throughout New York State in terms of social media presence, not just in terms of the various platforms that we're using, but also the type of content that we're delivering to folks on a daily basis in English and in some cases in Spanish, thanks to our police department. So I want to give a big shout out to Jamie, because many of the things that I was able to answer is only because she has done such a great job of educating all of us. Another great workshop had to do with internal controls for management. So basically, we put policies in place. How do we ensure that they're actually being followed when it comes to procurement, vendor selection, purchase orders, spending, cash control, things of that nature. This is something that I've heard before, but a different presenter from the controller's office, who was able to, really humanize the sort of processes that we go through in a lot of our financial transactions, and really understand where we can sort of look under different, different leaves and try to find ways that we can sort of find loopholes on our own before someone finds them for us. Finally, one of the main takeaways was about cybersecurity. Communities, all over the state, all over the nation, all over the world, local governments in particular, are focusing now on cybersecurity and making sure that, all of our firewalls and passwords are regularly updated and things of that nature. So again, that was a fantastic refresher, and I'm glad to see that, we are really doing well in terms of policies across the board, not just with cybersecurity, but with, our personnel, policies and things of that nature, making sure that we are really at the cutting edge of what local governments are expected to be doing. I'm happy to take any questions, but I just want to thank the board for, as always, giving me the opportunity to go to the conference, to meet, like-minded folks who can help us, with problems long after the conference is over, and for being able to bring all of this material back home to the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. I had a question about, I love NICOM. The name is a little deceiving because it's New York Conference of Mayors. It's
Right.
actually municipalities as well. In villages, towns have sort of another group that they go to, and just was wondering, is there anything post-COVID changes and anything like takeaways about open meetings and all of those kind of things that we learned during COVID, or is that already in the rearview mirror, or is maybe it's integrated? Was there anything very specific about that?
It seems, and of course, excuse me, the announcement was made shortly before the conference began, that Governor Hochul would not be extending the extension of the provision in the open meetings law that allow for us to meet virtually. So that was certainly a topic of conversation, but most of the other communities that, we met, many of whom are near to us in Long Island and in Westchester, have been doing hybrid meetings sort of all throughout. They didn't really, once we were allowed to go back in person, then disallowed, most of them continued. So, hopefully we can make a couple contacts about, making sure that, again, we're staying on the cutting edge of the technology to make sure that, these hybrid meetings are able to continue, so that we can include everyone. But other than that, there was really no, everyone was glad to be together, but, it's somewhat tenuous given the fact that, there are still cases out there.
And secondly, for me, was there any courses, because it was last time, about the cannabis legislation?
There was. Marissa actually attended those. So I will ask her to debrief. The sessions that she went to were more from the perspective of, employee drug testing and employee use. But certainly I hope that she'll be able to follow up with the board about what she's learned shortly.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, I just have one question, I guess. And Maddie, you don't have to go into too much of the details, but I'd be curious to learn a little bit more of the First Amendment portion and the
Sure.
Honorary portion and the customer service, and what kind of training are we going to be facilitating to our village employees, and obviously, I'm sure to any municipal facility that we have here in the village or town, for that matter. So again, you don't have to go into the details, but I would be curious to learn a little bit more of that. How are we going to be implementing that? I'm assuming our personnel director will be a key person as well for that at some point.
Deputy Mayor had a little trouble hearing you, but I believe what you asked about was the First Amendment auditor and what sort of training is being recommended and how we think we might be able to do that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I can answer it very quickly because we actually talked about this earlier today. This is something that I'm going to recommend, and Karen, Stuart, and Marissa, all seconded that this is something that we want to integrate into our annual training for all employees. Basically, just a short, maybe 10-minute add-on, letting employees know what the law is as far as federal and state case law, and then also what our policy is going to be in the village of Ossining. Wade Beltramo, who is an expert in many things municipal, actually gave a webinar also about it this morning to kind of underscore some of the things that we went over in the training. So I'm happy to share that with the board, but we're going to be approaching you very shortly with a policy for your review that can be adopted by this board that will apply to all of our municipal spaces. So the Recreation Center, the Armory, and 16 Croton, that sort of lays out exactly how we want to see privacy enforced, and then we'll be able to train to that policy. So again, happy to talk about it further, but I hope that answers your question, at least for now.
Yes, thank you, Maddie.
Yep.
Okay, you have more? You're done. Martha?
Okay, Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Martha. Good evening, folks. There is a planning board meeting Tuesday night, so you can check the agenda. That meeting will be at the Operations Center if you wish to attend
Microphone.
in person.
You're
Hello.
not close enough to the microphone, apparently.
Oh, I can talk loud. if
I
you
know.
like.
I think you're being asked to show that projection capability.
With regard to the planning board meeting, it's Tuesday night. It will be at the Operations Center. If you wish to attend in person, it is also available via Zoom, and you can watch that and participate via Zoom, as has been done in the past. I'd like to bring to the board's attention and to that of the public an important tax credit which was passed in the most recent budget, and that's called the COVID-19 Capital Cost Tax Credit Program. It is for small businesses in the state of New York. The regulations were adopted by the state on an emergency basis effective September the 2nd. It is for what is a small business is basically, you would have, just so I have it precise, it would be gross receipts of $2,500,000 or less for tax year 2021. Those businesses that have spent monies for COVID or other emergency related items, which I'll go into a second, can get up to $25,000 back from the state in tax credits. Important things to note, it has to be spent between January 1 of 2021 and December 31 of 2022, and paid for by March 31 of 2023. There are only $250 million in the tax credits, so it's first come, first served. You don't get it, you lose it. The types of things you could have spent your money on would be supplies to disinfect, restocking perishable goods, physical barriers, sneeze guards, hand sanitizer stations, respiratory devices, signage, materials required to define and protect spaces. There's a list of 15 that are in the rules. If you think you are eligible, you can go to the Empire State Development website. You will first have to be authorized, and they will do a preliminary. And if that happens and you are approved, you then fill out the application. And with the application, you can then process it. If you have at least $2,000 worth of expenses, you can get $1,000 in tax credits. The most you can get is if you spend $50,000, you get $25,000 in tax credits. Again, it's for small businesses. Important, a small business is, as I said, I've given you the income, but it's also 100 or fewer employees. That's also as part of the definition. And you are not eligible to use any funds that you may have gotten in what was known as the COVID-19 pandemic small business recovery grant program. That's monies that you spent between January 1 of 2021 and April 1 of 2021. So these are monies you're still potentially spending, but it's for these small businesses. It is open now. All the application documents are online. But again, since it is limited to $250 million and it's a statewide program, the sooner you get in, the better your chances of getting those tax credits. So,
Stuart,
yes.
in this category, are nonprofits in that size also considered small businesses?
A small business, a business entity, Mayor, most like it's defined in the rules as a sole proprietor, partnership, limited liability, or a C or S corp. So that would be the only ones who are applicable to that. And again, it deals with the income limit, as I mentioned, from 2021 and the number of employees.
Okay.
So just so everyone is aware, Jamie was kind enough to put up on, I believe on the web blast, will be the information relating to the handout from the state. But if you go into the Empire State Development website, it's all explained there. And again, you have to be pre-authorized before you can apply. And that gets done by the state. They have third-party auditors who essentially look into that. But keep all your receipts, because if you've spent it up through the end of this year, not spent, if you've ordered through the end of this year, but paid by March 31st of 2023, you can be eligible if you're that type of small business. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Chief?
Good evening. Just touching on a few things from earlier. Last night's tour of the police station, a few groups did come there. The purpose of that tour was not necessarily to see the building, but for them to meet with our mobile crisis response team, which has been up and running for quite some time. Also visiting the police station last night, we had Michael Orth, the Westchester County Commissioner of the Department of Community Mental Health, Karen Fink, the head of Family Services of Westchester, who is the vendor that runs our program, and Lindsay Farrell, who is the CEO of Open Door Health Center. So full house for that last night, as well as 4 out of 5 members of the town council. So full house for that last night. 2 events coming up. October 1st, we'll have another movie in the park out at Cedar Lane Park. That's going to be Hocus Pocus with a Halloween theme. And that's also going to be another camping trip sleepover event. So we'll be posting that flyer momentarily as soon as that gets sent to me. And on October 31st, we are still working on finalizing details, but we look forward to bringing back Trunk or Treat so we can return our Halloween celebration on Main Street. We're fairly certain we can make that happen, and looking forward to releasing details on that soon. That's all for tonight. Thanks.
That's great, Chief. Thanks. Two things that you brought up. I'll start with the last. I have been getting a couple of emails here and there about what we're doing for Halloween this year, because with COVID, there was some uncertainty and all that. So as soon as people know, much appreciated, so I could send out info. Anything you hear, whether it's the village or others within the village. And just a reminder that part of the police reform, which I think was left off in the conversation, was for us or the county, the village basically said, the board said that we are actually a little bit too small to manage mental health crisis in crisis scenarios 24 hours a day with staffing, etc. But it was something that came out of the police reform committee as a suggestion. And we always believed as a group, I think unanimously, if I remember correctly, that it should really come from the county at some higher level. And in fact, the county stepped up and did put together a crisis unit, one of which has rolled out here in Ossining for this area, not just for Ossining, but in the area. And so this did come out of police reform. This also was discussed, I think, Chief, you and I discussed it probably 3 months ago or 2 months ago, and said it would be great come after Labor Day that maybe the committee and the chair of that committee agreed with it. So it is to see the building a little bit because people get intimidated by these kind of buildings. Most of us don't walk into police departments and look around or get invited to do so. So in and of itself, I think that's great, but it really is, as the chief said, a lot more about, meeting with the crisis unit who's established there now. And I think is it a 1 year or 2 year pilot or 3 year pilot to be in Ossining, and then the county will decide what's going on? I feel like 3 years was the time frame.
So the pilot program is scheduled for 3 years. They're already talking about how they see it evolving over time. It is not piloted necessarily to be in Ossining or any one community. There are catchment areas, so our team is headquarters out here is something that we sort of demanded to make happen. I was on the committee with Westchester County to formulate the plan for this and to review the RFPs. So we were fortunate to be able to have them here. Our catchment area includes Ossining, Sleepy Hollow, Briarcliff, Pleasantville, and Mount Pleasant. So they're not necessarily an Ossining team. We're simply fortunate to have a really strong partnership with them. And we sort of set the example for others so far.
Yeah, I think it's great. Hopefully this will continue. Great. So just to put some perspective on that as well, I thank everybody for making that happen. And I think we're ready to move on the agenda. Martha.
Okay, is there anybody present physically at the municipal hall or online who would like to make an organizational announcement? If so, please raise your hand virtually and physically.
No one is raising their hand virtually.
And there's nobody there at the building, right? Or is there? No. Okay. Is anybody here who would like to make a public comment on the agenda items? I'm sorry, on the resolutions on the agenda.
No one is raising their hands online.
So we have the village board resolutions. Resolved that the, approval of minutes September 7th, 2022. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the September 7th, 2022 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of voucher details September 21st, 2022. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated September 21st, 2022 in the amount of $542,211.72. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution supporting the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022. Whereas providing clean water, clean drinking water, and protecting our local rivers, bays, lakes, streams, and waterfronts from pollution is paramount to the quality of life in New York State and the Village of Ossining. And whereas Modernizing water infrastructure will safeguard clean water, reduce flooding, reduce lead exposure and other public health threats, and create jobs. And whereas the village of Austining is vulnerable to extreme weather, including deadly heat from rising temperatures and flooding from severe storms that put people, properties, and public assets across the village at risk. And whereas upgrading transportation and stormwater infrastructure, restoring natural resources, growing urban forests, building green roofs, and upgrading cooling centers will reduce the impact of extreme weather, saving lives and money. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated the importance of outdoor recreation and access to fresh local food as people flocked to local parks and sought out healthy food for their families. And whereas upgrades to facilities at state and local parks and preserves and the creation of new outdoor recreational areas will benefit our region by protecting wildlife habitat, providing more people access to nature, and creating jobs in the outdoor recreation economy. And whereas the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022 will authorize the $4 billion and $200 million of bonds to finance critical environmental restoration, clean water, and infrastructure projects across New York State. And whereas funds will be targeted towards protecting clean water, reducing flood risk, restoring natural resources, protecting open space and farmland, and reducing the pollution that causes climate change. And whereas the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022 was paused by the New York State Legislature as part of the 2022-2023 New York State budget will appear on November 8th, 2022 New York State general election ballot for voter approval. And whereas the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022 includes strong labor provisions and will support more than 84,000 family-sustaining jobs for New Yorkers. And whereas the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Environmental Act of 2022 would enable New York State and the village of Austining to address pollution and public health threat in disadvantaged communities by directing at least 35% with a goal of 40% of measuring fundings to address hazardous conditions in such communities. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining supports passage of the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2012. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments?
Just one quick thing. I want to thank you, Stuart. I know you work with Susie Ross.
Microphone?
You gotta speak up.
I want to thank Stuart for the work that you guys coordinate with Susie Ross on this. So thank you very much, Stuart. I appreciate the hard work. That's it, man.
Okay, so I want a couple of comments. First of all, Stuart, I think you probably, as you read this, there's a bunch of typos in the second to last paragraph because they're run on the words. Address hazardous conditions such, and
Microphone?
there's just some typos and that really sounds weird. Is it only me that feels that's like a real weird voice over here? We're like literally speaking right into the microphones here, Jamie. Hopefully that works. So there's some typos in that paragraph. It looks like it was just the way, I'm sure you can pick that up. I don't know if it's important. There was another one I saw before too. New York State and in the second. So it seems to be in that paragraph. So be it like this whole paragraph looks like the words got jumbled together. So that's about typos. More importantly, I want to point out November 8th, election. Elections are coming up. There's also early election. So this is a bond that has to be voted on as part of the voting process. So number one, it is super important to vote, not only for humans who support what you believe in. I believe in a lot of what this act is about personally. So I'd be very interested. But if you don't go to vote, you also don't get to vote on these kind of things. So it's important to vote for people. It's important to vote for things that show up during election times like this. This is super important for this community. Two reasons. Number one, we are actually considered to be, since we're on the Hudson, flood zone is a big deal here as we look to build things for the next, that should last for the next 40 or 50 years. It's very important to look at where the Hudson is going and to look at flood zones, to look at droughts, to look at the dramatic weather patterns that we've had the past few years. If you go to other places, I just came from a country where they've had floods and they've had droughts for the past number of years, which has dramatically affected their economy, dramatically affected the way they live, how they build houses. It's not all good stuff. A lot of it has cost millions and millions of dollars to small communities. We're not alone in this, but we are aware that Austining sits in an area that is dramatically affected by weather patterns. So at least for me, I support this. I was involved in the conversation Green Ossining on Facebook also has more information. There's lots of information about this bond. It is about jobs, green jobs and environmental jobs. From my understanding, is part of the future of the upcoming generation graduating from college, environmental studies, etc. So this is like a big deal beyond what's good for the physical infrastructure, but also about jobs and our community. If this passes, should, given the parameters, benefit dramatically from any of the monies that are being given out, and that would be very helpful to us. So just a word to the wise, and there's a lot of information. I had it in the mayor's message as well this week, and there are links to look at this as well. And I think I put it on Facebook this morning as well. Okay, anybody else have any comments? Okay, Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Call for public hearing, proposed honorary street naming for George W. Hill, for Dr. George W. Hill. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby calls for a public hearing to take place on Thursday, October 6, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. at the Municipal Hall, 16 Croton Avenue, Austin, New York, to consider the proposed honorary street naming of the intersection of Academy Place and Straight Street in memory of Dr. George W. Hill, pursuant to the village's honorary street naming policy. And be it further resolved that members of the public are invited to attend the public hearing in person at the above referenced location. And be it further resolved that these members of the public who want to attend/participate in the public hearing remotely, access will be available via the Zoom platform. And be it further resolved, the comments regarding the proposed honorary street naming will be accepted by the Board of Trustees at bot@villageofaustining.org. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments? No? Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Appointment of Richard Gans to the Board of Ethics. Resolved that the Board of Trustees appoints Richard Gans SQ to the Village of Austining Board of Ethics for a term expiring on December 31st, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments? I just want to say thank you, Stuart. We spoke to Mr. Gans. The Ethics Board is the only one that technically does not have a liaison, so oftentimes the mayor sort of steps in when there's a need to interview candidates, find candidates, interview. I had spoken to Mr. Gans during the summer. Stuart followed up. I think he will be there's a bit of a shortage in that committee, and I think he will be a great addition to the Ethics Board. So I thank him for his time and volunteering.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution approving 2022 cabaret license for Grace Hall Ltd, 7 Old Albany Post Road, Austining, New York. Whereas pursuant to chapters 100 and 171 of the Code of the Village of Austining Code, the authorized representative of the business Grace Hall Ltd, 7 Old Albany Post Road, New York, presented an application to the village clerk as licensing officer for cabaret license for pre-recorded or live music and floor shows. And whereas pursuant to section 100-4 of the code, the village clerk referred the application to the chief of police for full investigation as to the truth of the statements contained therein as to any or all other matters which might tend to aid in determining whether or not such application shall be granted. And whereas the village clerk also referred the application to the village building inspector to inspect the premises for the cabaret and to advise if any violations of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code and Village Code were observed. And whereas pursuant to section 100-5 of the code, the police department advised that no complaints had been made against the applicant within the last 3 years, nor had there been any calls for assistance for the applicant's premises within the last 3 years. And whereas an inspection of these premises was performed on August 9, 2022, and that inspection revealed no violations. And whereas pursuant to section 100-6 of the code, the village clerk referred the application to the Board of Trustees, which board is responsible for determining whether the cabaret license should be granted or denied. And whereas the Board of Trustees at the September 14th, 2022 work session discussed and reviewed the application, hearing from Lieutenant Donahue, the Austining Police Department and Corporation Counsel, now therefore be resolved that the application by Grace Hall Ltd, 7 Old Albany Post Road, Austining, New York, for cabaret license for 2022 is approved as follows. Grace Hall Ltd, days and hours: Friday 6 p.m. until 11 p.m., Saturday and Sunday 1 p.m. until 11 p.m. Type of entertainment: solo performer up to 5-piece bands. And be further resolved that pursuant to section 100-7, the village clerk shall issue the cabaret license. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Comments?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear who seconded or motioned. It just kind of blurbed out really fast. Could you just repeat that again?
I motion to move.
I seconded.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution approving 2022 cabaret license for Here Coffee Incorporated, 20 Main Street, Austin, New York. Whereas pursuant to chapters 100, 171 of the Code of the Village of Austin Code, the authorized representative of the business Here Coffee Incorporated, 20 Main Street, Austin, New York, presented an application to the village clerk as licensing officer for a cabaret license for pre-recorded or live music and floor shows. And whereas pursuant to section 100-4 of the code, the village clerk referred the application to the chief of police for a full investigation as to the truth of the statements contained therein, and as to any or all other matters which might tend to aid in determining whether or not such application shall be granted. And whereas the village clerk also referred the application to the village building inspector to inspect the premises for the cabaret and to advise if any violations of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code and Village Code were observed. And whereas pursuant to section 100-5 of the code, the police department advised that no complaints had been made against the applicant within the past 3 years. And whereas an inspection of the premises was performed on August 11, 2022, and that inspection revealed no violations. And whereas pursuant to section 100-6 of the code, the village clerk referred the application to the board of trustees, which board is responsible for determining whether the cabaret license should be granted or denied. And whereas the board of trustees at the September 14, 2022 work session discussed and reviewed the application from Lieutenant Donahue of the Austin Police Department, Corporation Counsel, and Dylan Hardman, applicant's president. Now therefore be it resolved that the application by Here Coffee Incorporated, 20 Main Street, Austin, New York, for cabaret license for 2022 is approved as follows. Here Coffee Incorporated, days and hours, Thursdays and Fridays, 12 p.m. until 8 p.m., Saturday, 12 p.m. until 9 p.m. Type of entertainment, solo acoustic, as well as an ensemble of up to 5 members with instruments. And be further resolved that pursuant to section 100-7 of the village clerk shall issue the cabaret license. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second. Comments?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution approving 2022 cabaret license for La Tusa Bar Restaurant Incorporated, 26 South Highland Avenue, Unit 2, Austin, New York. Whereas pursuant to chapters 100 and 171 of the Code of the Village of Austin Code, the authorized representative of the business La Tusa Bar Restaurant Incorporated, 26 South Highland Avenue, Unit 2, Austin, New York, presented an application to the village clerk as licensing officer for cabaret license for pre-recorded or live music and floor shows. And whereas pursuant to section 100-4 of the code, the village clerk referred the application to the chief of police for a full investigation as to the truth of the statements contained therein, and as to any or all other matters which might tend to aid in determining whether or not such application shall be granted. And whereas the village clerk also referred the application to the village building inspector to inspect the premises for the cabaret to advise if any violations of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code or Village Code were observed. Whereas pursuant to section 100-5 of the code, the police department advised that no complaints have been made against the applicant for the past 3 years. And whereas an inspection of the premises was performed on June 28, 2022, and that inspection revealed no violations. And whereas pursuant to section 100-6 of the code, the village clerk referred the application to the board of trustees, which board is responsible for determining whether the cabaret license should be granted or denied. And whereas the board of trustees at the September 14, 2022 work session discussed and reviewed the application here from Lieutenant Donahue, the Austin Police Department, Corporation Counsel, and Juan Quesada on behalf of the applicant. Now therefore be resolved that the application by La Tusa Bar Restaurant Incorporated, 26 South Highland Avenue, Unit 2, Austin, New York, for a cabaret license for 2022 is approved as follows. La Tusa Bar Restaurant Incorporated, days/hours, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 9 p.m. until 12 a.m. midnight. Friday and Saturday, 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. Types of entertainment, pre-recorded or live music, floor shows, and be it further resolved that pursuant to section 100-7, the village clerk shall issue the cabaret license. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Stuart, what's the floor shows? How is that defined? Is that just the lingo or is that?
I'm sorry, Mayor, that's just the language that they put into their application. It's going to be just instrumentation and music.
Okay, because the other one had, up to 5-piece music and stuff. This one puts in floor shows. I guess. So. All right. Ready for the vote?
I just want to make a comment in here, just a point of clarification on my behalf, I guess. And refers to the gentleman that I had the application here. His name is Juan Quesada. It's no relationship. I want to make sure that is clear. I don't want to create a conflict of interest of any matter. So.
Okay. something I was actually gonna ask you, so I'm glad you pointed it out. No, it's good for the public record, to point that out. Thank you. Okay, Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Authorizing the village manager to sign a side letter agreement with the Civil Service Employees Association, Village of Austin, Unit Number 9163, Westchester County Local 860. Resolved that the village manager is authorized to sign a side letter agreement with the Civil Service Employees Association Incorporated, Local 1000, AFSCME AFL-CIO, Village of Austin, Unit Number 9163, Westchester County Local 860 Union, amending the current collective bargaining agreement, January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2024, as follows. The job title of Assistant Building Inspector shall be reclassified as Job Group 12. The job title of Assistant Building Inspector / Plumbing Inspector shall be removed from the collective bargaining agreement. And be further resolved that the above reference changes to the collective bargaining agreement shall be effective immediately upon ratification by the union and the Board of Trustees. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments?
I think it's just for me as a point of clarification in regards to this. What is the, because I remember having a conversation, I guess, about the assistant building inspector. I don't remember having a conversation about receptionist or receptionist Spanish speaking.
That's not part of the resolution.
We didn't get a chance to update it, so the resolution should just read,
Okay.
took those off because we have not had a chance.
Okay, so the same thing for the senior office, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
So the last,
Yeah, so this
okay,
is.
so it's literally
separating
just
that
the,
from an
okay,
error that we just got too late in the day.
okay, not a problem. So, what is it, I guess my only other question in regards to this is when you change the reclassification of the group of job, what is the salary increase or decrease?
I don't have that in front of me, Maddie, do you remember?
I can, it's the same as, I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble hearing. The salary range for job group 12 was sent out to the board in the initial memo back in August when we first approached this. So I can go back and recirculate that, but it has not changed.
It just went up one step, I think is what happened. But I don't think we remember the exact.
It would be moving from job group 10 to job group 12.
What are we voting on specifically? If we're not voting on some of these things.
This is to, these titles don't currently exist in the village contract, so the way that they're delineated here, so we're removing a title that's not used, assistant building inspector, plumbing inspector, and then we're adjusting the assistant building inspector to reclassify the job group.
And the rest of the, we're
So
still.
the rest of it, we'll deal with it at a different time, but we haven't really had a chance to discuss that with the board.
Okay, and you're, it's going retroactive to January 1 of 2020?
No,
That's
Karen, if I might, so currently there's no one serving in either of the positions that would be affected by this change, either assistant building inspector or assistant building inspector / plumbing inspector. This is going to give the Human Resources Department an opportunity to recanvass the lists at a different salary.
Okay, this was a discussion from 3 weeks ago, right?
More than 2 weeks ago. but
More than
yes.
that.
It was
okay.
a few weeks ago.
Okay. Can we
That's
vote
okay,
on
Maddie,
it?
that's okay.
Okay,
No
can
worries.
are we okay voting on the one item? And then discussing the rest? That's what's being asked, it sounds like, yes?
We don't have to discuss the rest at this point.
Right.
We're just taking that off the table. We'll discuss that in the future.
Okay. We're good to go? Or are we waiting for info?
No, we're good to go.
Okay. Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Okay. Contract award modernization and maintenance of passenger elevator. Resolved that upon review by the village staff and consultant contract DPW 2022-02 modernization and maintenance of the one passenger elevator 16 Curtin Avenue is awarded to Lift Elevator LLC 151 West Lincoln Avenue, Mount Vernon, New York 10550 for the bid amount of $335,500 as the lowest bid received from a responsive and responsible bidder. And be further resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign contract DPW 2022-02. Do I have a motion?
Oh,
Second. Comments?
I do.
Okay.
I like that. Go ahead.
I see Andy and Paul here. Obviously, we voted in a resolution a couple of weeks back in regards to the capital project for this particular project itself. So can you guys elaborate a little bit more in the amount that is shown in here? And obviously, it was only one contractor that bidded this, or that was part of the bidding process. So can you elaborate a little bit more in regards to that, please?
Deputy Mayor, before they respond, let me just go into it a little bit, if I might.
Yeah, please,
That would
thank
help.
you. Yes.
We did have a meeting today, in fact, with the bidder, Andy, Paul, Karen, John Heitman, John Fry, and Karen Doherty from DPW were all there. We went over the contract, we went over the bid. The $335,500 is the bid. The board passed a capital project a few weeks ago for $400,000. So that allows essentially for more than a 10% cushion, if you want to call it, with
Contingency.
regard to this.
A contingency fund.
Contingency, well, get over you, lose the words. But a couple of things. The contractor indicated that it is at this time, it will probably take about 15 weeks to get the items for the elevator. And once they're in, it will then take about 8 weeks to install. That is all dependent, obviously, on supply chain issues. That's what we're talking now, is about 15 weeks from the time of getting the contract. This individual was here today. He was part of the walkthrough. There were discussions, as I said, John Fry was here as well, who is the village's consultant. But the number 335,500 was, as you correctly note, that was the only bid that was received for this particular project. This entity, Lift Elevator, which is out of Mount Vernon, does a lot of work in Westchester, specifically in Yonkers, as well as in White Plains, and was familiar with the particular system we have here. But I did just want to fill that in before Andy and Paul add anything else as to what's going in. They did answer a couple of questions that we had with regard to the bid. There were a few matters that were not filled in. They are now filled in. So assuming the board approves this, a contract award letter will go out most likely by tomorrow, at which time the bidder will then provide insurance information and the performance and payment bonds as required. And then they will start the process of getting the necessary equipment so that we can start the process. But Andy and Paul, it's obviously, you have far more knowledge on this than I do.
The only thing I wanted to add, that was well said, Stuart, was that there's two subcontractors that they will need to hire. One will be for the fire alarm system and tying in the smoke alarm systems. And the other one would be the HVAC, which would be the dehumidification for the equipment room. So that's in the bid. And anything outside of that, we need to provide a break, and Trustee Fritchie would understand this. We need to provide a breaker for them to hook into in our main panel downstairs. We did do the research. I know the board was aware to make sure there's a large enough service coming into this building, and we will use our annual electrician to put the correct size breaker in for them to terminate to. So that's pretty much everything that I know.
So to append what Andy said about the electrical work, there was a question that came up in the meeting this morning that Stuart had referenced earlier. And that was with respect to what our building inspector and our building department would need to have permitted. I talked to the inspector this afternoon, and I think we're all on the same page, and we won't be subject to any of those 2020 references that he said that might have altered the potential spec. So that's a good thing. And Joe's aware, and we're going to keep him in the loop as we go through the process. Joe Gustinelli, that is. With regard to, Stuart covered most of it, but I will tell you that this is not the only capital project that we have, but as you know, we're going to be under supply chain issues. So the main thing we talked about, I think, from the impact most of the building is that we're really not going to do this piecemeal and start and stop and start and stop. We're going to wait till we have everything in place, and then we're going to start it and try to finish it as expeditiously as we can to limit the interruption within the building itself, because it will be noisy at times, and we're going to be working during the day, and we're going to have to make things a little inconvenient with regard to parking sometimes. And, you know, it will be logistically challenging with an operating building like 16 Croton Avenue, but we are aware of the challenges, and we will take them on as they come. With regard to supply chain issues and the schedule, we're going to only really be able to work that out once the orders are made and he hears back from his vendors about the materials. So we don't really want to, outside of executing a contract and getting the orders going, we don't want to really commit to a schedule just yet for all the staff of 16 Croton Avenue. But once we get our handle on that, we're going to sit with everybody on all 3 floors and talk about what the impact is going to be and when they can expect it. And we'll work around it, and we'll make sure we work as cohesively and aware as possible with the ongoing operation.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. So 6 months.
Again, until we get the orders and we get the answers from the vendors, we really can't commit to a schedule, because he was estimating, based on the other jobs he's working on right now, that are similar to this, that he was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart or Andy, I think he said 15 to 18 weeks lead time on a lot of materials. So,
Correct, Paul.
you know, maybe, but until he makes the order and we actually see it on paper and we get a commitment date, we don't know. And I'll tell you something else, commitment dates recently aren't really worth the paper they're printed on. We have capital purchases like vehicles and trucks that gave us commitment dates when we executed the PO of 6 months, and within a month or 2 time, that's out to a year. And some of them, which you've been aware of through some of our presentations in previous meetings, specifically chemicals at the plant and some of our annual bidders, have said not only is it delayed, but you're going to have to pay more now because of our inflation adjustments. So, you know, we don't know until we know. But this is not a very large project. It's just going to be, everybody's going to be very aware of it because of where it is. So 6 months, as soon as we have any handle on that estimate, we're going to let the manager know, and then you will know, I'm sure, shortly thereafter.
Okay, so no less than 6 months. And the good news is that it'll end up, in that case, being when the weather's warmer rather than the winter, which really makes it inconvenient for the employees. So that would be a good thing. This is, look, it is what it is. It's a non-emergency scenario. Everybody here is adjusted to it. I don't want anybody thinking it's some sort of emergency. It just has to get done. So it will. Sounds great. Thank you, folks.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Is there any continuing business of the board? No. Is there any new business of the board?
I actually have, I could do it here, I could have done by email, doesn't really matter. I understand that the town last night spoke about the operations, either because I see the policy, which is why I'm bringing it up. This came up about 4 years ago, last time I heard about it. looking for space to consolidate or rethink where their operations unit is. And so if we can get an update whenever you have one, Karen or Stuart or Paul, since you're all on here, I figured I'd catch all at the same time. Let me know and let the board know where we're heading with that concept, what the town is looking to do, how that affects us, and some recommendations for what we might do. Again, I think last time was, it's gotta be about 4 years. Talked about consolidating everything where our, opposite center is with the property next door, but now there are others. So I know they discussed it in the meeting last night. So if we can loop ourselves in, and if there's any actions we should be thinking about, let us know. As far as also, I guess I should have done a different business, Maddie, since I have you. Again, I could have done it by email, but since we're all here, at what point are we getting the analysis of that parking scenario? Because we talked about getting an analysis of how the parking is working out with the new payment systems and who's using what, where, and when. I see the microphone being moved over to Karen's. Karen's moving the microphone very close to her mouth, so I'm going to say she has something to say.
We are looking to provide an update at the next work session, but I want Maddie to sort of set expectations of what we have right now in terms of data and how we're going to use that data as a benchmark going forward.
Maddie, that was thrown to you. I don't know if you heard it.
Yep, I heard it. Sorry, just a little choppy. I did hear it. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking
yes.
at you and I'm seeing wide eyes, so I can't. You heard everything?
I heard
Maddie,
everything. Yes.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I heard everything. I heard the request. I heard what Karen mentioned. And yes, we do plan to discuss this in next week's work session. But again, as Karen mentioned, because of a couple other projects, we've been a little waylaid of doing the actual coin audit, which Mayor, I think you and I had discussed. This is a very antiquated software that came with the parking meters back in the day. We were looking to see if we had a computer that was still capable of running it. So that's where we were in the process. But we can certainly give an update next week and sort of talk about, where we are with the app, what the experience has been thus far, what feedback we've gotten, where we're looking to deploy it next, and then sort of explain a little bit more about the coin audit and what that'll look like.
Okay, fabulous. The only reason I bring it up, in some ways, no rush, in other ways, yes, a rush, is when we all voted on it, we talked about, hey, let's do 6 months, let's analyze. And there's so much going on, so many grants being written, in some ways, I'm not pushing you, but in other ways, I'm sort of just would like to bring it up there so that we can, parking's a big issue. There are like 3 different projects related to parking. As we get the DRI money, as that starts flowing in, some of the projects we have, and I know you know this, but I'm also putting on public record, some of the projects are dependent on parking. Would we go with some initiatives if parking isn't being supplied for it? Maybe yes, maybe no. But looking at data is really important, because as I drive around and all of this conversation about parking, maybe it's because it's, it was August, so August is slow, and now it's like back to school, so things aren't back to normal yet. The parking scenarios in our downtown isn't quite what I keep hearing about. The parking scenarios in some of our residential streets, on the other hand, are problematic. And so I'd like to sort of get a handle on it, especially with the projects that we're approving, so that when we go forward DRI, that we're doing the right things based on data and not just people's opinions, because it has to last for like 50 years. So we'd like to get this huge ship in the right direction at the right speed, and not look back 5 years and say, oh, I guess we didn't exactly hit the mark. I'd like to hit the mark as close as we can for the future. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. Excuse me.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, I want to piggyback on the first point that you brought in regards to expansion, sure, and what the town is thinking of doing. Just as a point, I guess, of clarification, at some point, if this ever comes back into the floor, one of the things that my recollection is when we're looking into doing something with the town at that time is when we were actually also looking into do renovations at the op center as well. And since then, we have canceled a capital project for that. So I just want to be mindful of if it's something, again, I don't know what the direction of the town is going to go, and I'm not sure if there was any conversations in regards to us doing anything, partnering up with them or not. But just keep in mind that if we were to do that, we do have to have a capital project that brings back the whole capital project to do any infrastructural updates to our current facilities.
Oops. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Mayor, if I might, just one thing that I will bring to the board's attention, probably maybe next week, but maybe the week after that. There was a change to the tax law in the state, which would affect village residents. I've also asked the town and the school board what they're doing. It relates to the tax exemption, or essentially the special star credit given to seniors, low income and disabled individuals. The state has raised that from 35,000 to 50,000. And I've asked the town, the school board, school district, if they are in fact going to pass legislation. I know that the county is thinking of doing it. And this board obviously can do that as well if it chooses to do so. I have gotten from Dale a list of the number of properties that might be involved. But I did just want to let the board know that that was something the governor signed fairly recently, but it is a change in the tax code in the state to raise the exemption for those low-income seniors and those who are disabled. We already have a senior exemption in our tax code. We also have a disabled, but this would raise, I think we currently have 35,000, which is the state level. State level is now 50,000, if the board wants to do that. Otherwise, it would stay at 35. So just wanted to present that to the
Interesting. You know, one would think that when we pass that legislation, will be indexed to the state. So if they go up and down, it automatically happens. So it's sort of interesting that we actually have to consider that. So good to know.
just to let you know.
I appreciate it. Okay. Anything else under, I think we're under new business.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, is there anybody here, whether at 16 Croton or online, that would like to address the board on any issues not related to the agenda, but are relevant to the common good of the village? If so, please raise your hand.
I'm not seeing any hands in the gallery.
Okay, in that case, is there going to be an executive session, Stuart?
Yes, Martha, on a matter of litigation, please.
Okay, so can we have a second and a motion to adjourn the public meeting for an executive session for litigation?
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No. And with that, it is, somehow, oh, the clock is right. It's 8:45 on Wednesday, the 21st, and that concludes our meeting. Please join us next week. Again, we are live and really in a hybrid mode, live and online going forward. So, and it's always in the boardroom at 16 Croton. I shouldn't say always, going forward until further instructions, it is at 16 Broadway, 16 Croton. The jet lag is definitely setting in. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.